Hello and Happy New Year. It is literally January 1st, so my reading stats are the freshest they're ever gonna be. Hey, what's up everyone? My name's Frankie W and welcome back to my life. We are going to talk about all the books I read in 2024 and do my storygraph wrapped. This is my first year with the storygraph fully, so I know that they do kind of a recap wrap of your stats for the year, and I'm gonna look at that at the end. I just took the thumbnail photo and now I'm putting on my hoodie because I'm cold. I have my reading journal with me and we're gonna go through and talk about all the books that I read this year, and we can talk about some personal stats I made, my storygraph stats I made, and just how I did. This is a visual representation of all the books I read this year. Spoiler alert, the answer is 32. And yeah, we can get into it. So let's start off with January. In January, I read 2 books. They were both audiobooks, and they were kind of books that I listened to while I was doing work and just getting settled for the day. So that would be Girl Taken, which is the second book in Blake Pierce's Ella Dark FBI suspense thriller. I think there were like 20 of those books, and I don't know how much more I'm going to continue with them, I'm gonna be honest. They're really interesting in the moment. They're like popcorn books and you can read them really fast or as slow as you want them to, and nothing really changes. It's like episodic. Think Criminal Minds, basically. Ella Dark is a computer analyst who has the opportunity to work as a profiler, and she kind of has a lot of knowledge internally about serial killers and murderers because of her own experience with a murder in her family, and that concept is very cool. Ella herself is just kind of annoying, and at first I thought she was going to be very like Spencer Reid, and instead she annoys me a lot, and she's whiny and she's entitled. And then the second book I read in January is Madison Beer's The Half of It. I gave it a 3-star, and to be honest with you, I also wanted to rank this one a little bit lower. I didn't want to rank it lower because I feel like maybe people would see that as me personally attacking her, and I don't want it to come off that way. So I gave it a 3 because it's like standard, but I think this book was very juvenile. I think is the best word to describe it. I think Madison Beer is an amazing singer, and I do think that she should have a bigger career than she does, but unfortunately I think part of the reason her career is the way it is and why she's so small is because people don't think of her as a singer first. They think of her as an influencer. I feel like the reason I wanted to read this book is because she was on Pretty Basic with Alicia Marie and Miss Remy Ashton. For one, Alicia in episodes before was talking about, without naming names, Madison being at that plastic surgery salon and how like there's a back door. So obviously those photos were staged, and she was just like, she never said Madison's name. I knew she was talking about Madison because I am too plugged into the culture. Like, it's actually kind of embarrassing how chronically online I am. But anyway, Madison came on the podcast, talked about different things. She was so open and vulnerable on the podcast marketing the book, and then she's not open and vulnerable in the book, and I think 100% it's because of how much hate and horrible treatment that she's gotten before. I don't think death threats are okay. I don't think her having her intimate photos leaked when she was underage is okay. None of that's okay. Point blank period. Realities that happened to her have like shaped her into who she is, so she's a lot more reserved. And even if she says she's more open with her fans and her community or whatever, this book has a lot of reasoning. It's a lot of reasoning and definition and scientific examples to back up her points to make her sound not wrong. You know, I think that comes from people invalidating her often. Next is the month of February. In February, I read 3 books. We had Music is History by Questlove, Passing by Nella Larson, and Hidden Figures by Margaret Lee Shelterly. So Questlove's Music is History is a historical book about music. in history. Basically from 1972 to 2022 when this book was published, or 21, I'm not 100% sure right now, but it's literally a documentation of music and how music affects society, but also how society affects music and how different things that were happening were influenced by others. And I just think, as someone who is very passionate about music, this is something I should have read, and so I did, because I am really curious about music. I know he's released one about hip-hop and I want to get it. I don't know how soon I'll read it because this was dense and I feel like it took months to read. But I will say, if you're going to read this, you should listen to the audiobook, because Questlove plays like samples from different songs, and also he has voice actors say certain lines, and he narrates the story himself. Passing by Nella Larson. I mentioned this in my January and February wrap-up video. I just don't think that this book is made for me. I don't think that I'm the intended audience. I usually have issues with classics, which is, when we get down the line, why I was so shocked that I liked Frankenstein so much, because I've read books like this and The Scarlet Letter and other books at a very young age, and not to say that I didn't like them, but I just didn't resonate with them in the way that I think I was supposed to. And I said The Scarlet Letter, but I actually don't remember if that's a good example or not, so don't take me at my word. Passing, it is the story of Claire Kendry and Irene Redfield. They're both two black, light-skinned women in the 1920s who can pass off as white. One of them lives their life pretending to be white and actually marries a white man with him thinking that she's white, while the other lives her life as a black woman, and their paths kind of intertwine and intersect, and a lot of interesting things happen once they figure that out. Hidden Figures. Hidden Figures is another book that was completely out of my comfort zone, and for the month of February I was just in a Black History mood, I guess. But this follows the story of Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, and Katherine Johnson, and it's about the black women behind NASA, as other women as well, but black women and women of color who are the reason that we made it to space. And I think it's really important, and it's a really important story, and it's one of my favorite movies. I think the music is done by Pharrell. Yeah, and so we have Taraji P. Henson, Janelle Monáe, and Octavia Spencer on the cover, so this is the movie tie-in cover. And usually I don't like books with real people, but this cover is an exception. And from February we go to March. In March I only read one book, and it was You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kaylin Barron, and it is her only slasher inspired book. Kaylin Barron is known for doing retellings of Disney princesses. She's done Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, and Snow White so far. So this was kind of her interpretation of an 80s to 90s slasher. Think Friday the 13th or Halloween or Scream in those respects. We follow Charity as she plays a final girl in this contact horror house at a camping location, and basically her and her staff are there for the whole summer, where people just drive up there, pay to get scared, and Charity plays the final girl who survives the night. And basically one night a lot of campers start going missing and start getting injured, and chaos ensues. Truthfully, when the night in question happens, it's like a needle drop. It's so insane. It's such a good book. I think it's fun and campy, and maybe it's a little silly here and there, but that's kind of why I love it. Next we have April. In April I also only read one book, and it was Crazy Rich Asians. So this is the physical book. I was really listening to it on audio while also sometimes real-time reading it. This book was a lot denser than I expected, because there's just a lot of context in history that I didn't need. And if you've seen the movie Crazy Rich Asians, which who hasn't, it's this is what the movie is based on. A lot of the storyline stays the same. However, I will say in the movie, and this is not a spoiler because I think preparing for this, because it pissed me off. In the movie, Nick tells Rachel that he's rich on the plane. In the book, Nick doesn't tell her. She finds out when she pulls up to his house for some special dinner event where she is like considerably underdressed compared to everybody else in the room because she was unprepared for where she was going. So, I would like to say, because of this, like, I like this book. It's not so bad. I will say it's a bit dense, as I said before. But because Nick is so, because he's a man, and he just, I don't know, he tries to be like, oh, but Rachel doesn't care about those things. And it's just like, I just feel like starting your relationship with a really big secret like that, and then playing it off that it wasn't that big a deal, is a red flag. Next, we're in May, and in May, I read 3 books. We have My Hero Academia Volume 4, The Boys in the Boat, and, The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren, which is a novella, so I'll put that on the screen. First, I read My Hero Academia Volume 4. I read a bunch of My Hero Academia this year, so I'm going to just mention it now, and when you hear about it later, that's what this is. This is a story about Midoriya Izuku, the green-haired one. This one, he's our main character. Him. He is born in a society with quirks. Quirks are what you would consider superheroes in this society. So think everyone is born with a superhero. Well, at least 80% of the population. And somehow, this 1 in a million chance, Midoriya is the only kid that we know of in his generation in Japan who is born without a quirk. And obviously, there is a lot of segregation and mistreatment that he experiences as a quirkless individual, and he wants to be a hero. Everyone with quirks wants to be a hero, but it's a society very much like The Boys or Invincible or even like The Incredibles, where being a superhero is a job. And a lot of people are in it for the wrong reasons, and it's not about saving people, it's about making money. So that also comes into play, where you like have these heroes, but not all of them are good, because a lot of them actually truly are only in it for the money, which is a storyline that comes into play very soon, because there's a person who just starts in heroes he doesn't think are worthy. Midoriya gets a quirk and it's about him learning to use it, because of right now it breaks his bones every time he uses it, which is such an insane concept. What? Anyway, that's all I'll say about that, because if I talk more, I'll give you spoilers, because I'm way behind in the manga, but I'm fully caught up on the anime. So there's that. The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren. This is my first time reading a novella, and it's also my first time reading Christina Lauren, and it was really cute. I really liked it. It's about these 2 people who accidentally email each other on Valentine's Day. One of them is trying to get an extension for an assignment, and the other has an email similar to a teacher. And ever since then, they started emailing each other once a year on Valentine's Day. It becomes this kind of a tradition. They kind of like each other, and they never give any personal information out, because don't talk to strangers, kids. And it turns out that they kind of have been in the same orbit as each other for a while. The guy figures out who she is due to her giving too much information. And yeah, and then they get together. It's very cute. I like it. I think it could have been a full story. Not the but like the ending, like their relationships, them growing up together. I could have read a full book. I know other people might not agree with me, so I'm fine with it being as short as it was. But I was like kicking my feet. It was really cute. I loved it. Boys in the Boat. This is another book that I really listened to on audiobook. 9 Americans and their epic quest for gold at the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Spoiler alert, they win. It's not really a spoiler. I feel like everyone knew that. But it's the same year as Jesse Owens, so this is a story that's less known, but it's about them winning gold in 1936 in Nazi Germany. And it's during the Great Depression, so obviously we're talking about poorer students versus richer students and those experiences. And it's a really cool book because it has like photo inserts. And I don't know, this is like the most random book to get emotional by. But I definitely got a little misty-eyed at points, and so, yeah, I think this is what kicked off the no more nonfiction for a while, but it wasn't bad. I did like it a lot. The nonfiction books are long. Long. This book is literally, oh my god, the index makes it 400 pages. The author's note makes it 375 pages. It's 370 pages. Like, that's so long to talk about boys in a boat. But it's a really good book. I'm acting like I didn't like it when I gave it 4 stars. But it's just like, nonfiction takes it out of me sometimes, okay? Now we're on to June. In June, I read 2 books. I read Wicked, book 5 in the Pretty Little Liars series, and I also read Frankenstein. The audiobook is on screen right now. Wicked, book 5 of Pretty Little Liars. I feel like I ought to just average out the ratings of all these books and give them 4 stars. This is book 5 in the Pretty Little Liars series, so the first 4 are a couplet. I'll just show one. They're all pictures of full body dolls, and the next 4 are also a set where they're the faces of the dolls. So this is kind of how you separate the first 4 books from the next 4 books. Pretty Little Liars is a series about these 4 girls who are friends with this girl named Allison. Allison goes missing one night. These girls are the last ones to see them. People think she's dead. People think she's kidnapped. People think she ran away. A year later, when Aria returns back to Rosewood after Allison goes missing, the girls start receiving text messages and notes and threatening letters by this elusive person named A, who knows their secrets, but the only person who knows the secrets that A knows is Allison. So at one point they think that Allison is tormenting them, and then they don't think it's Allison, and then other stuff is happening. Basically, the first 4 books give us who A is. That is not the A of the next 4 books, and so there are like 16 to 18 books if you include novellas and other little stories. One of them being Allie's Pretty Little Liars, which they consider this book 0. Do not read this first. They say it's a prequel novel. Do not read this first. It gives away insanity of spoilers, so read this after book 8. If you're gonna do it, this is 8.5 or 9.5. No, 8.5 before you read 9, okay? This is in between. That's all I can really say about Pretty Little Liars without giving spoilers, but hopefully I can tell you more about Pretty Little Liars in 2026. Maybe I'll finish the series then, and then I can do a video on all the books. I've been taking notes in my phone, doing a body count and death toll. So when I finish the book, I can give a full rundown with and without spoilers. And the other book I read in June is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I have never read Frankenstein before, and I know my name's Frankie. It seems like a no-brainer, especially with Monster High. I am Frankie Stein. But I just have never read it before, and I was kind of scared too because I absolutely hate classic literature. I don't hate classic literature, but sometimes it's just not my cup of tea. So I was expecting not to like it, but it was just amazing. It was so in vogue. It was thought. It was just everything. I think about this book all the time, and this is another book that I debate moving to a 5-star. It's just so good. Personally, it's just so good. Like, I have no other words, but it was just so impressive. And if you truly don't know the story of Frankenstein, it is about Victor Frankenstein, this man who wants to play God, basically, and tries to create human life out of the dead body parts of other people, and he puts them together and creates a monster. And the monster in current pop culture zeitgeist is called Frankenstein, and that's why everyone says Frankenstein. But he actually never has a name, so really he's Frankenstein's monster. And Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein, that's who they're talking about. It's a very uncanny valley. Basically what happens is, after creating life, it's so unsettling to look at that he shuns it. And by shunning his creation, the creation becomes like bitter and angry and just violent. And it vows for revenge. It's a really good story. I think you should check it out. As if no one's ever read Frankenstein. But honestly, I don't want to assume people have read it. Like, I hadn't read it, so there are probably other people out there. July, my biggest reading month, where I went into X game modes. I came home for like a couple days, and I like banged out all of my Heartstopper graphic novels I'd been waiting to finish. But first, The Ballad in Songbirds and Snakes. I feel like it took me forever to finish this book. This is the prequel to The Hunger Games. This is about Coriolanus Snow, who we meet in The Hunger Games as President Snow. So this is his life before his rise to being a dictator. And I think because of that, it's not my personal favorite book because I have already grown to hate President Snow through 3 books. So having a story that it doesn't humanize him. He still sucks. So really, it just makes me hate him more. And then I'm like, why am I reading this, you know? But it is really cool because it gives like context, and it gives like the building blocks for what will be the future of the Hunger Games. And I'm not saying I don't like it, but I will say I like the movie more because I had more time with Lucy Gray Baird. And in the book, it's all in Coriolanus's freaky little head. Ugh. But that's the point. That's the point. But, you know, it's the point. I know it's the point. You don't have to tell me it's the point. The Killer, Book 6 of Pretty Little Liars. Sorry, I just did that Pretty Little Liars little excerpt. It applies to this, Book 6. Great. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Girl Hunted, the 3rd book in the Ella Dark FBI suspense thriller series. Compared to the 2nd book, I like this book more. Not by much, but I did. And yeah. Ella is not growing on me. There was this moment at the end of the book where I was like, kind of like, oh, now I kind of want to know what's happening in her personal life. But it happened so late. Like, I was like, oh, I'm kind of interested, you know? I should have been interested from the beginning. Like, that's what should have happened, but it didn't. So anyway, that was Ella Dark. Wash Day Diaries. So this is a graphic novel that follows 4 Black women, one being Afro-Latina, and it follows 4 Black women in just like a slice of life graphic novel, and it just talks about them and their hair. Some of it is more serious than others, like one of them is going through a depressive state, and another one is having issues with her grandma who has Alzheimer's, and it's so interesting. Like, the art style is beautiful. The way that they like insert themselves when their friend is telling a story, I love. And it's such a beautiful depiction of friendship and sisterhood. And there's this one friend who came over to do her friend's hair, and they don't shame they don't shame their friend for not knowing how to do their hair. And it's just like, it's all so beautiful. And they all look beautiful and happy and beautiful and smiley. And yes, I love Cookie, Kimana, Kamisha, and Davine. Like, I love all 4 of them so much. And then they have a sleepover at the end. Like, look at them. I love this. And they're all wearing their bonnets. Yes, yes. More black joy. And look at them on the back. Heartstopper 2 through 5. Heartstopper is a series that follows Nick and Charlie. Charlie is an openly gay, because he was outed, openly gay student at his high school. And Nick is not anything in the beginning. And he kind of figures out that he's bi by being near Charlie, and figures out that he wants to be with Charlie. And then it's their love story. It's so beautiful. And I'm not going to apologize for telling you that Nick is bi or saying that it's their love story, because if you look at any of the covers, they are in love. The first cover says boy meets boy. It continues from there. I have the collector's edition of the first one now. I love it. It's so cute. I don't know if I'm gonna get all of them, but I do love the first one. When I came home in November for Thanksgiving, I finally got to watch Heartstopper season 3, and it's just as good as every other season. I love Heartstopper. I love Heartstopper so much. We have My Hero Academia volumes 5, 6, and 7. So that's the next thing on the list. I already gave you my Hero Academia spiel. Quirk society. Superheroes going to superhero school to be better. Next is August, and in August I read 2 books, and the first one is The Princess Diaries. Guys, I have never read The Princess Diaries, and I feel like that was a series that as a kid I would have absolutely ate up, but I never read it. I had never heard of it. Obviously I kind of knew that there was a series based on the movies were based off of, but I had never seen it or sought it out after seeing the movies. But the audiobook is so good. It is narrated by the Princess of Genovia herself, Anne Hathaway, and I think it just makes it, Anne Hathaway has this very youthful voice and the way she's talking, and also I just think Amelia is so much younger than I thought she was, so that was crazy. And there are some major differences from the book to the movie, so I think that helped me separate them a lot, because I can't really think about Julie Andrews smoking a cigarette and being very rude and manipulative, but I can definitely see Grandmère like that in the book. Also, did you guys see the announcement about Princess Diaries 3? Oh my god. I also read My Hero Academia Volume 8 in August. September. In September, I only read 1 book, and I think in my recap I mentioned this. I didn't do any of this damage. This book came like this. Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is her story from being sexually assaulted by Brock Turner, to the court case, to the aftermath. She wrote this Emily Doe victim statement, and it kind of went viral on BuzzFeed back when going viral was very, very hard, and it kind of just changed her life for the better. And just reading the story was just so impactful. And I mentioned this in my September, October, November reading wrap up, but the reason I read this is because with Cindy recommended that if you liked Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died, you would love this book, and I really did. It was just a really inspiring book to read, and I was in a really good mental space when I was reading it, so that made it better. I actually read 1 more book in September, and it was Coraline. So in preparation for seeing Coraline at Cinespia with Samari, I read or listened to the audiobook of Coraline. I had never read the book before. The narration is very interesting. Oh my god, I can hear the creepy mice song as we speak. I don't ever think I questioned Coraline's age, but knowing that 11-year-old was going through something that traumatizing as someone pretending to be your mom trying to trap and then eat you, October. And in October, I actually only read one book, and it was My Hero Academia Volume 9. In November, I read 2 books. It was My Hero Academia Volume 10 and then Making a Scene by Constance Wu. I don't want to talk about this too much because I really do think the last recap I made was so fresh about this, but Constance Wu is someone who I really admire as an actress, and I had no idea about a lot of the experiences that she had going on behind the scenes. So hearing her perspective, people thinking that she's some uppity actress because she didn't want Fresh Off the Boat to continue shooting when she had a very uncomfortable situation with a producer, is very, very enlightening and also alarming. In December, I also read 2 books. So these are the last 2 books of the year, and I haven't talked about these yet on my channel, so I'm going to talk about them a bit more than the others. I read The Wild Robot and The Forest Hills Bootleg Society. The Wild Robot had a movie come out earlier this year. I knew that The Wild Robot was based off of a children's book, but I had never actually read it, so I was so curious to see what the hype was about, especially because there are so many book lovers who are obsessed with The Wild Robot. So just as I'm working and as I'm going through my daily life, I would listen to the audiobook. I had Daisy take this really funny photo of me where I was like wearing green, I had my Wild Robot mug, and I was listening to the audiobook, and I was like, I'm in my element right now. I love The Wild Robot, and these are my journal thoughts. From knowing nothing of The Wild Robot to working on the movie, it was nice to revisit the story and see how they compare. This was a great story. I can see why kids are obsessed with it. Roz is a very good character to follow, and I am very interested in how the series continues in the other books. And for those who have never heard of The Wild Robot and haven't seen the movie, it is the story of Roz, and she is a robot that is built in like a later down the line, think the Jetsons type of society. And it's like The Wild Robot is also a commentary on like environmentalism and future and innovation, also like found family and motherhood. She's a robot that crash landed on this island. She learns to adapt and live on the island by observing the animals native to the land, and then an accident happens where she was attacked by bears, and she somehow ends up with this baby gosling, and this gosling only knows her and has only seen her, so it believes that she is their mom, and she becomes the mother to this gosling and just helps it grow into an adult. And it's a really beautiful story of motherhood and of found family and just like this community that Roz was able to make. The last book I read this year is The Forest Hills Bootleg Society, and I have so much to say about this. I was going to put it in my Christmas on a Cruise vlog, and then the vlog was almost like 30 minutes. Forest Hills is the town that the story takes place in, and there's a Christian boarding school in Forest Hills that 3 of our 4 main characters attend. The other one does not attend, but she wanted to, and when she asked her mom said, why would I pay for you to go to a school in the city, for you to live at a school in the city we live in? And it was just really funny. Basically, these girls were trying to buy DVDs off of this drug dealer, and one of them is an anime fan. Annie is an anime fan, and basically she thinks they're getting Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli, basically, and she's asking for My Neighbor Totoro and Princess Mononoke, and instead he gives them Super Love XL, which turns out to be a very provocative anime. Some might even say hentai. They watch it, they can't turn away, and they're like, wait a minute, dudes love stuff like this, like we should sell this on DVDs to the boys at our school. And then they burn discs and sell them, and that's why it's called the Bootleg Society. And it's the funniest thing ever. They try to sell these DVDs to the boys at their school, and all the boys at their school are like, nah, you got the wrong person, no way, like this sounds illegal, maybe I should tell the principal. And then this one boy buys a DVD, and then all the other boys hear about it and then go buy the DVDs. And there was this one page, and I was in public, and it was the most insane thing ever. This is a age 14 and up book, because this is Harper Teens. Look at this page. What? Yeah, so this is all of the boys watching Super Love XL and their reaction to watching it as Christian boys. And it's just really, really funny. It's a slice of life though, and so they're like the losers of their Christian boarding school. They go to a Christian boarding school though, so I don't know how you can really be that far on the totem pole, but I think as a byproduct of selling the DVDs that they think that they will be cool and popular, and they're not. Instead, the popular kids kind of take advantage of them, and it's just a really, it's an unfortunate story, but it's a really good story, and I really liked it. So yeah. So now we're gonna do my storygraph stats, my little recap that they give us every year. So I'm gonna start screen recording now. Your 2024 reading wrap-up. Congratulations on a great reading year. You finished 32 books across 5,179 pages and 126.2 hours. The first book you read this year was Girl Taken by Blake Pierce, and the last book you read this year was The Forest Hills Bootleg Society by Dave Baker and Nicole Gow. Your 2024 storygraph. A mood map of your reading from lighter books that push the line up and darker books push the line down. So I read a lot of darker books in the first half of the year, and then from June on we were on the up and up, guys. You traversed landscapes of the heart, set off on thrilling quests, and indulged in cheerful amusements. The pages practically turned themselves in a whirlwind of excitement. And then we have my books, pages, and minutes per month in 2024, so I'm just going to unselect the other two, and we can just do books read. So I at least read one book in every month. My highest reading month was July with 11 books, and my lowest reading month was March, April, or I think that's October. Those are all months where I read one book. And then when it comes to pages read every month, and my biggest month again was July. My lowest months were April and September, where I didn't read any pages, which is probably when I was reading mostly audiobooks. Minutes listened, my biggest month was actually February, and my lowest month was October. Cool. Yeah. And then if you put pages and books, you can see the difference. Cool. I mean pages and minutes, that's what I meant. Cool. Awesome. And then congratulations on meeting your reading goal. Great job on reaching your pages goal, and well done on achieving your hours goal. So my original goals, before I amped them up a little bit, so my original goal on Storygraph were read 24 books, read 4,000 pages, and listen to 24 hours of audiobook. So I upped my goal, I think twice, from 24 to 48 to 72. And so I accomplished that goal 175%. When it comes to 4,000 pages, it was 129%. And then when it came to 24 books, it was 133% because I read 32. So it's a few over 24. And then the genres that I spent the most time with in 2024 are contemporary and young adult, with 10 books in each category, and then fantasy, and then LGBTQIA, and then manga. And then the longest book I read this year was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which was 517 pages. And the shortest book I read this year was the Christina Lauren novel, The Exception to the Rule. And then the average length of books you read was 266 pages, and it took you around 32 days to finish each book. Yeah, I would say an average of a month it takes me to read a book, and that's really just because some books I finish in a day, and some books I finish in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but it's like I pick it up, I read it, I put it back down, I don't pick it up for 3 weeks, pick it up, read it, and then it's done. So it's really when I have time to read, and I want to make more time to read in 2025. And then The least time spent reading a book, Wash Day Diaries, took me a day, and the most time it's spent reading a book with 192 days is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I did say it took me forever. Yup. 192 days is crazy because that's more than half the year, I think. Actually, I need to, yeah, wow. Yeah. Yay. Okay. And then the authors that you spent the most time with in 2024 are Kohei Horikoshi, Alice Oseman, and Blake Pierce. Kohei Horikoshi is the author of My Hero Academia. Alice Oseman, the author of Heartstopper, and then Blake Pierce is the author of the Ella Dark FBI suspense thriller series. And then 2024's average rating was a 4.12, so it looks like I know how to pick them. And then my 5-star reads of the year were Wash Day Diaries, Heartstopper, and Know My Name by Chanel Miller. And when it comes to my average rating, I gave 2 books 3 stars, 2 books 3.5, 5 books 3.7, 8 books 4, 3 books 4.25, 7 books 4.5, 1 book 4.75, and 3 books 5.0. And then some months were better than others. My average rating for March was a 4.5, and January wasn't my favorite month with an average of a 3.25 star rating. My most pages read was in the month of July with 2,495 pages. And then lastly, let's talk about how my stats compare to other users on Storygraph for 2024. So my most shelved book is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. 306,971 users have also shelved it. And then my least shelved book, or the least shelved book, is Girl Hunted, the 3rd book in the Ella Dark FBI suspense thriller novel. Only 562 users have read it or shelved it. And then my highest rated book that I've read this year was Know My Name by Chanel Miller. It has an average rating throughout all of the Storygraph with a 4.825, a 4.82, and I gave it a 5.0. And then I did read some things that were different than my normal picks. I read Hidden Figures by Margaret Lee Shelterly, and it was informative, inspiring, and slow paced. And while informative and inspiring are not completely out of my comfort zone, slow paced definitely is. Yeah. And then you explored 17 new authors, including Chanel Miller, Meg Cabot, and Dave Baker. And 20 of my books I read were part of a series. And it was only new stories and ideas for you this year, no rereads. That is true. I didn't do any rereads this year. The year before I reread The School for Good and Evil. And then you finished all the books you picked up this year, no DNFs. Also technically true because the Storygraph now has a paused feature. So I just paused the books I paused Amelia Westlake Was Never Here, It's Down Here, and I paused The Taking of Jake Livingston. I will finish those. I'm not a DNFer. I have to finish them. There is a book on the shelf that I wish I DNF'd, but I didn't, so there is that. You read 15 books from your own shelves this year. Correct, I did do that. Some of them I bought this year too. And then you successfully completed 2 reading challenges. That is something I want to work on in 2025. I think I never tried challenges. And then 2024 at a glance. These are all my book covers together, and I can share the cover collage and then explore my 2024 stats. And then just going through my stats really quickly. As I said, 32 books, 5,179 pages read, and 126.2 hours. When it comes to mood and pace, it takes me about 1 month to read a book. My biggest chunk was emotional, and then adventurous, and then lighthearted, with those being 11, 10, and 9. When it comes to pace, I have 50% fast, 47% medium, and 3% slow. When it came to page numbers, most of the books I read were under 300 pages. Only 6% were over 500. When it came to audiobook length, I also tried to stay with books under 8 hours. I read 81% fiction and 19% nonfiction. This is a bigger breakdown of all of the different genres I read this year or listened to. And then When it comes to format, 53% were print, 44% were audio, and 3% were digital, and that 3% is, I'm pretty sure, literally one book. Yeah, it's the novella. And that is a goal in 2025, is to read more physical books because I own so many physical books. That is my reading wrap up for 2024. I cannot believe that another year has happened. It's absolutely insane. This is the year that I'm gonna be consistent when it comes to uploading on my channel, but also uploading book related content. So stick around. I have a beginning of the year book tag coming soon, as well as my reading journal flip through. Bye!